All right, everybody, welcome back to Border Patrol Watch. I'm Jen Budd, former senior patrol agent with the United States Border Patrol, and I'm with my co-host, Marianna Trevino Wright, from McAllen, Texas, activist, the butterfly lady, butterfly bitch, as the Border Patrol calls her. We decided to do this spontaneous episode today because of what is going on in Eagle Pass, Texas. And so I'm going to let Marianna take it away, and we're going to talk about the truth and what's really going on. So take it away.
Yeah, earlier this week, July 18th, reports started to come out in the media about a Texas Department of Public Safety troopers letter to command. It would seem that troopers and National Guard, everybody involved in Operation Lone Star, has been given the same directives, have been given the same orders or instructions, because there's also some discrepancy as to whether these were official orders. We'll get to that. But now the letter has been published from this Texas DPS trooper, Nicholas Wingate. And in my book, he is a hero. He knows what I know, what you know, what others who have observed the immigration policies of the United States and their partners, state partners and others, for-profit partners in detention facilities and others, already understand that cruelty is the policy, and these are designed to inflict harm and even death. These reports, and his letter is quite detailed, talks about the razor wire, the concertina wire, which Wingate calls casualty wire in his letter, strung on the riverbank, and now apparently wrapped around barrels that are submerged in the water. So they're invisible snares beneath the surface of the water, all set out to supposedly deter immigrants from crossing the river. What is this about, Jen?
This is Deterrence Policies 101. And it's interesting for us to see the public reaction from politicians who have known and supported deterrence policies for 30 years. So I appreciate the politicians who are coming out and calling this for what it is. But where have you been for the last 30 years? The only reason why you haven't said anything in the last 30 years is because since October of 1994, we've had deterrence policies in the Border Patrol that intentionally and knowingly send people to the most dangerous terrain to cross. That is Border Patrol's immigration policy. That is deterrence policy described to a T. And that was enacted by then President Clinton. I was a Border Patrol agent back then. I knew the Border Patrol before it got to my station and afterwards. I spent 6 years collecting the bodies that you now are all so disgusted by seeing their injuries and their deaths. But you didn't care before because they were out in the mountains and they didn't bother you. They weren't in your neighborhood and you didn't give a shit. But let me tell you, it doesn't just hurt migrants. It also hurts agents and the officers that are doing this. That's why my hands are fucked up. That's why when you see me talking, my fingers are messed up, because I had a massive suicide attempt like a lot of Border Patrol agents. And now a lot of National Guard are having suicide attempts because of the oppression and the awfulness of what they're doing. And pretty soon, your Texas DPS officers are going to start killing themselves too. That's just part of the results of these deterrence policies. So while I'm excited to see people really upset by the visuals that they're seeing, this has been U.S. policy. And this Concertina Wire, my understanding is in the military, they call that casualty wire. Maybe this officer is a former military officer or soldier, and that's why he calls it that. But what they are doing is exactly what we've been doing in the U.S. Border Patrol for 3 decades now. And it has killed over, the official total is 10,000, but those are only the bodies that the Border Patrol finds. The Border Patrol does not count bodies found by other agencies. They do not count bodies found by the human rights groups that go out and find them. They do not count bodies found by hikers. And the actual number is at least 3 times to 10 times, conservatively 10,000 people. So you're looking at anywhere from about 30,000 to 100,000 as a guesstimate. And that's from experts like me and other experts like Colibri, who goes out and tries to match the bodies and the bones with their loved ones back home and get them back home. There are many groups that go out to find the bodies that are left out there, but the majority of the bodies are never found. They're buried under the sand, they're swept away in the waters, or they're torn apart by the animals, and they are never to be found. And nobody in this country has ever fucking cared about it, no matter how much we talk about it. We do have a map in Arizona that shows all the bodies that have been found since October 1994, and I will put that up. And these are just the ones that were found. And then I also have a map that was recently done of San Diego County and Imperial County, so the California border. And I'll put that up. And it's going to blow your mind. And so when you're out there and you're upset and you're talking to your politicians about what these Texas deputies are doing, and rightly so, you should be doing this. You should be picking up the phone. You should be going down to the border and protesting and doing whatever you can to stop this brutality and this cruelty. But at the same time, don't stop. Remember, this has been going on for 3 decades. You just haven't seen it because we've been hiding it out in the middle of nowhere in the desolate areas.
Even Trooper Wingate, in his letter, explains that they performed a water rescue of a mother and child who were later pronounced deceased at the hospital. But eyewitness reports are there was another child that was also in the river and went under, and they never found that body. So we know this is happening. A year or 2 ago, my husband and a friend were out on the river out here in Mission, Texas, and came upon 2 bodies in the river. And when they contacted Border Patrol's first question was,
what side of the river are they on?
That's exactly what they asked. What side of the river are they on?
If they're not on our side of the river, they don't count.
And then they said that they would send the helicopter in response to these bodies. Now, Jen, would the helicopter be recovering these bodies, or why would they send a helicopter?
They send the helicopter, and the helicopter turns so that its rotors wash the body over to Mexico. So then it doesn't count. There's been literal shootings on the border where the body falls and lands halfway in Mexico and halfway in the US. And the Border Patrol's like, push, and pushes them into Mexico so that they don't have to count that body as being in the United States and a dead body in the United States. So this news came out, as far as I know, it started coming out on the 18th of this month, July 18th, 2023, the news of what he was doing in his complaint. And I think we didn't see the complaint until recently, so we'll talk about it in a minute. But on the 18th, I put out on Twitter, I said, okay, so this is how this is going to go down. They don't put out orders like this, written orders. They put them out verbally. And I know this because this is what they do in the Border Patrol. The most horrible things they make you do, they don't write down. And this is what happened during the Trump administration with child separation. If you talk to former Secretary of DHS, Christian Nielsen, however you freaking say her name.
Christian
Nielsen. She will tell you there's never been a policy of taking asylum seekers' children just for crossing the border illegally. There was no policy about that. And that's because they never wrote it down. So this is common practice. And they've either taught this to DPS or DPS just, it's something in law enforcement. And I'm not aware because my specialty is in Border Patrol. And they'll say, oh, we're going to investigate it. And then they're going to come out and say, oh, the troopers misunderstood our orders.
You nailed that one.
If that didn't fucking happen 2 days later on the 20th, and we'll put up the tweets from DPS. Oh, this officer, he misunderstood our words and our directions, and there is no actual directive, meaning a written policy to push people back. Now, it's not just cruel and brutal, it's against federal law. Once somebody has put a foot on the United States, which in this area is halfway across the river, before they get to the casualty wire, before the DPS officers are pushing them back into the river, they are actually on United States property. And when you put your foot on United States property, by federal law, you have to be processed. You have the right to a credible fear hearing. So these Texas DPS officers are violating federal law right now. The head of DPS is saying, no, that's not true. He misunderstood and all this other stuff. I'm telling you, as somebody who used to investigate and write reports and stuff, this man is not lying. He is giving dates. He is giving exact locations. He's saying what happened when they're taken to the hospital. He is providing actual evidence to what he was ordered to do. And so Texas DPS, you're fucking lying.
He is providing evidence of this for many reasons. Clearly, he has a conscience. He's a Christian, it would appear, by his own words. But even more than that, this is the kind of thing that would protect him against prosecution in the future. There's so many things to unpack here. You know, one of the things he talks about is a pregnant woman entangled in this casualty wire, suffering a miscarriage. And I've given birth to 4 children, and I know that stress, blood loss, dehydration, other things can provoke premature labor, even miscarriage. So this is being done by our MAGA GOP governor and his state officials who claim to be pro-life. It's all about the sanctity of life, but not if it's a baby in utero, which they also claim to want to protect. It's okay to subject poor women of color to this. Now, I also want to say, his use of casualty wire struck me really, because I've heard it referred to as razor wire, as I believe it's Dannert wire, as Concertina wire, but never as casualty wire. And the
only reason why you put that up is to injure people. That's the only reason. And that's why it makes me think he probably maybe has some military background, maybe his father or his mother or something, or maybe he himself. And so the military knows when you put that up, you're looking to fuck people up.
Yeah,
that's just it.
The definition of casualty is a person killed or injured in a war or accident. And so we already know this is a war on migrants.
Yeah.
Calling this what it is really important. I just, I see Joaquin Castro and Beto O'Rourke and others, suddenly making a lot of noise about this. But when we tried to make noise about it, everybody was silent. And they all said,
oh, you're crazy.
Yeah, and you're making a big deal about nothing. People will see this wire.
They just need to not cross.
Yeah, they need to not cross, or when they see it, they'll avoid it, or they can go through it or around it, or the cartel will come and cut it.
There's plenty of legal ways for them to get through.
Yeah, so suddenly...
Just lies, just freaking lies.
It is, and it's political theater. And yes, I'm the asshole for calling out these people, these politicians. They've been silent. They knew what it was designed to do. And now we've got this performative, fake outrage. And Beto's even started a petition. And I will tell you, petitions are useless. The government wipes their ass with them.
So are polls. Polls are useless too. You're right. You've been talking about it for a long time. I wrote a whole freaking book about it and what it does to migrants and what it does to us. I have a series on consequence form right now. The very first piece is about deterrence policies and how they're genocide and how they are intentionally killing people. So I'm glad that Beto's on board. Joaquin's always kind of been on board, though he disappeared a little bit in the Biden administration, though I know he was sick with some, I believe he had cancer or something, but he's well now, so I understand that. But the truth of the matter is most of the Democrats who were active and willing to call out our brutal immigration policies when Trump was in office have disappeared now that Biden, their guy, is in office. So I'm glad that you're here now. But you know what? You need to turn around and point that finger at the Border Patrol and the Biden administration and Secretary Mayorkas and everybody else, because this idea comes from the freaking Border Patrol. I want to read this trooper's
Wingate's letter to
notes.
his
Yeah, Wingate's
command.
letter. If you read, and you listen to what I'm going to read to you, you will see how there are dates, there are specific explanations. This isn't just I saw some troopers doing this. I don't remember what day, sometime last week or something like that. I don't know. He had dark hair. No, this is a well-respected trooper who has come forward to say that we have gone too far. On June 25th, 2023, we went on patrol to see how many gates were locked on the fence line south of the casualty wire at approximately 2200 hours. While doing so, we came across 120 people camped out along the fence line. In this group, there were several small children and babies who were nursing. The entire group was exhausted, hungry, and tired. We called the shift officer in command, and we were given orders to push the people back into the water to go to Mexico. We decided that this was not the correct thing to do. With the very real potential of exhausted people drowning, we made contact with command again and expressed our concerns, and we were given the order to tell them to go to Mexico and get into our vehicle and leave. After we left, members of the brush team coordinated with Border Patrol and got the people processed and taken care of. So they are working with Border Patrol. And you know, Border Patrol hasn't said a word about this. Biden has not said a word about this. Mayorkas has not said a word about this. Chief of the Border Patrol, what's his name? Jason Owens has not said anything about that. The next entry is on June 30th. At approximately 1500 hours, we had a group of people at the casualty wire seeking refuge. In this group was a 4-year-old female who attempted to cross the wire and was pressed back by Texas National Guard soldiers due to the orders given to them. The temperature was well over 100 degrees, and you have to remember that in this area there is very high humidity, so it feels probably like 110 plus. Shortly thereafter, the 4-year-old passed out due to exhaustion, and a DPS sergeant and Texas Guard soldier extricated the patient and transported them to the U.S. side. We provided treatment to the unresponsive patient and transferred care to EMS, Emergency Medical Services. Again, on the same date, on 6/30, we had an adult male with a significant laceration in his left leg. We asked him what happened, and he stated that he had a child who was stuck on a trap in the water. He said that there was a barrel that had casualty wire all over it, and his child was stuck on it. He extricated his kid, and while doing so, the barrel trap lacerated his leg. Again, on 6/30, we had a 15-year-old male. This is all within a few days. This isn't like over a month or anything.
Yeah, he gives like a 1-week date range or so that all of these incidents occurred.
So on 6/30, we had a 15-year-old male child who, while walking in the river, due to the casualty wire being laid out in a manner that it forced him into the river where it is unsafe to travel. And while doing so, he broke his right leg, and his father carried him the rest of the way to the Rosetta Gate. We then splinted the leg and transferred care to EMS. Again on 6/30 at 21:30 hours, while patrolling the casualty wire near Pecan Farms, we came across a 19-year-old female and in obvious pain, and she was stuck in the casualty wire and doubled over with pain. We cut her out of the wire and medically assessed her. She was pregnant and was having a miscarriage. We promptly coordinated with Eagle Pass EMS and transferred care. And so this goes on and on and on. And just like that, you have committed human rights violations. You have committed crimes against humanity. And you can be charged for this, just like every Border Patrol agent could be charged for this. Go ahead.
Even the Concertina wire that they've strung on land, people think, oh, well, that's visible. No, it's not. They cleared the land to put it out They have done no maintenance since putting it in. So the grass and the brush and the native trees are all growing back up to conceal this. This concertina wire, as they are using it, and these traps in the river, these barrels wrapped in wire, and who knows what else. These are nothing different than landmines, which we know are tools of death and of mutilation. They are intended to deform and to kill.
Yeah. Originally in 1994, then Commissioner, back then CBP was called INS, Immigration Naturalization Service. And Commissioner Meisner had stated that the purpose of deterrence policies was to make it so difficult that a certain amount of migrants who crossed in the deserts, in the mountains where I worked, and in the rivers, and in the deserts of Arizona would have to be injured, physically injured, emotionally, mentally injured, and some would have to die. And the news would get back to the migrants and say, oh, no, you don't want to do that because it's too dangerous. So inherent in deterrence policies is the idea that a certain amount of people are going to have to die. A certain amount of people are going to have to be seriously injured because of our actions and because we push them out to those areas. And so what is Texas DPS doing now that they have, the truth has come out and that they have injured so many people and so many people are taken to EMS, and Texas taxpayers are having to pay for all these medical situations and all this time that DPS is putting in to maim and kill people? Well, they're doing the same thing that we did in the Border Patrol. Now they're putting out pictures of them saving people. And let me tell you this is not about one DPS officer. This is not about one Border Patrol agent. This is about a system. So you don't have to feel bad about the people in uniform. You have to understand that this is a system, and we need to say this is inhumane and we are not going to tolerate this in the United States of America. And we have to start getting loud, and we have to start vocalizing it and saying, you know, this is not acceptable, and not allowing them to lie to us. DPS right now is lying to the public. Governor Abbott is lying to you. They are doing this intentionally to kill and to hurt people, to deter them from coming across. But what we know from 30 years of this is deterrence does not work. If it did, they would have stopped freaking 25, 20 years ago. You don't understand that they are just as desperate as the things that you are putting out. Their option is death or maybe death. And so they are going to keep crossing. And I'm sorry, but we're responsible. The United States of America is committing human rights violations. This is a genocide. It is a lazy man's genocide. And we are a disgusting nation for what we are doing. There are more humane ways to handle this.
You know, one of the things that outrages me is that the Biden administration is lying about this also. You know, we have sins of commission, the ones that we commit, like with DPS or the Texas Military Department saying, we didn't order this. Mm-hmm. Then we have the sins of omission, where we didn't actually do anything obvious or affirmative to advance that lie. We just ignored it or remained silent or did nothing. And that is what the Biden administration is doing. And that is tacit endorsement, if not actual cooperation and collaboration in this process. And daily, we see Border Patrol and Texas National Guard and DPS and state police working together, and not just Border Patrol responds to something and DPS arrives, or National Guard sees something and DPS responds. They are literally riding in the same vehicles. They are working hand in glove together on all of this. But where are the protests? Where is the liberal or Democrat outrage? Where is half of the nation, half of the voting populace, those registered electors who brought Biden into office? Where are they? Why are they silent now?
Where's AOC crying on the fence? Where is all of that? All of you people, even Vice President Harris, he went down to Florida to talk about the undocumented children and how they were. Where is she right now? I mean, to have this going on our border and have our federal agencies and our federal elected officials just be like, I've signed a letter.
I've signed a letter, and the next thing we will
Yeah,
have
fuck your
is-
letter.
Yeah, and the next thing we will have is congressional delegations showing up to walk around and inspect and look at.
Investigate, they'll investigate and say, well, there was a misunderstanding. They didn't understand. And nobody will be held accountable. But let's be honest, where did DPS get this idea to do this? Well, when Biden told former Chief Rodney Scott, when Biden took over and he told former Chief Rodney Scott, you can resign or you can retire or you can take a reduction and bump down, but you're not going to be chief of the Border Patrol anymore for so many good reasons. I mean, this is the man that during the Trump administration, when women and children were coming across in San Diego, they were coming up to the port of entry to try and apply for asylum. He had his agents shoot tear gas into Mexico against women and children. That man, since he's retired, now works for Greg Abbott through a Texas policy organization. Governor Abbott's border czar is Michael Banks, isn't he a former patrol agent in charge of McAllen, I believe, right?
He was the former patrol agent in charge of the McAllen station, which is always a promotion and a stepping stone to bigger things. Everything that's happening here and that the government, state and federal, are doing together for theater, for fear mongering, to create propaganda that impacts public policy and that impacts the way all of our tax dollars get spent. It is a crime, and it is why we can't have nice things in this country, like high quality education and universal
It is.
healthcare.
I hate to say it, but it is. It's why we can't have nice things in this country. We're too busy, spending money on Casualty Wire to shove migrants through and then go, we didn't make them do it. What are you talking about?
We're too busy giving money to Elbit, an Israeli company, or this company that made the floating buoy barrier from South Africa, or to Google and Boeing and Raytheon, all of these corporations who pay our politicians.
Defense contractors.
When we could have dams. Ask the people of Vermont how nice it would be to be secure against this epic flooding that they've just had. But, we could have quality water systems, but Jackson, Mississippi and Flint, Michigan don't warrant those. We could have a water resiliency plan for the Southwest, but that's not happening.
It's interesting because you see the worst of the Border Patrol ideas, like the floating barrier wall that is going to kill many people, and you see these Border Patrol agents who've always wanted to enact this stuff, and they couldn't do it in the Border Patrol, and so they turn around and they resign and they go work for the state of Texas or this other group, and a lot of the chiefs end up going and working in these fellowships and these advisory groups to a lot of the companies that are building these traps and so forth. I mean, and the fact that the chiefs in those sectors, Gloria Chavez and the other chiefs in Del Rio and so forth, they're not saying a word. They sit there and claim the number one thing that we do in the Border Patrol is save lives. Well, the policies that you enforce, deterrence policies, intentionally push them out into the most horrible areas. You are literally pushing people into the deep end of the pool with weights around their waist and ankles. And then you go and try and rescue some of them. And then you pat yourself on the back and give yourself awards for all this shit. But you put them there in the first place. The fact of the matter is we are always going to have people coming to our southern border, and we can either choose to deal with it in a humane and orderly fashion, or we can choose to do it this way. And the fact that not all of the Democrats signed Joaquin Castro's letter which I think is, all respect to him and everything, it's worthless. I just want to say, like, so I've mentioned a couple of times that deterrence policy started in October of 1994. And I entered the patrol I got out of the academy and got to my station in November of 1995, and had about, during that first years when the first wall got up. And I could see, Campo is up in the mountains in East County, right before you drop down into the literal sand desert. So there's plenty of chaparral and brush and mountains to climb and boulders, and I'll put up a picture to show you. It was one of the toughest stations to work at. In the wintertime, it snowed, migrants would freeze to death. When you freeze to death, a lot of times you go crazy and you think that you're hot, and so you find them with their clothes off, totally naked. Content warning, I'm going to describe this because I think America needs to know, and not enough of you are reading my book and my writing, so I'm going to say it. And I know, because I ain't making money off of it. So, and in the summertime, it gets above 100, above 110, and that was, 20, 30 years ago. So it's hotter now. Climate change is accelerating, and I was in the best shape of my life, obviously, coming out of the academy. And there were times where I thought I had pushed it too far and was going to die, and I would have a Camel water back on me, and I had a radio and stuff. When you die of dehydration, it happens rather fast. By the time you realize that you're thirsty and you stop sweating and you start to get chills, it's too late. Your organs are starting to fail, and you'll start shitting your pants, you'll start vomiting, and then your body is going to cramp so bad it's like a Charlie horse over your entire body. And the amount of pain that individuals go through is obscene. The Border Patrol has actually put out videos of migrants in pain in those cramps, and they eventually usually die. You very rarely ever, once they get to that point, are able to give them fluids and they survive, because once the kidneys start going, they're going to go. And what people don't understand is it takes a long time to get to the border. They've spent a lot of time going to the ports of entry, trying to apply and finding out that there's no avenue for them. They can't wait that long. Their lives are in danger. So they end up crossing illegally. And they are often assured by the smugglers that it's maybe a 20 or 30-minute walk, when it's actually a 3-day walk. And you cannot physically bring enough water or food. I have seen migrants who've lost body parts on trains. I've seen migrants with their stomachs exploded. I've seen children frozen to death. This is what deterrence policies are. This is done intentionally. And so what we did, because we were losing so many agents in the late 90s, is as quickly as we could hire, people were leaving because they saw what deterrence policies were doing. So what Border Patrol did is they created a rescue group called BOR-STAR. It's Border Patrol Search and Rescue Team. Because when I was an agent in the mid to late 90s, and so we got a call that somebody was lost or somebody was dead, we had to go find them. There was no special team. There was just who's working, who's in the area. Charlie 178, that was my call number, my last call number, my star, they call it a star number. We got a report of blah, blah, blah in Echo Valley. You got to go, blah, 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 blah. And you spend sometimes 2 shifts working this. And it got to the point of where so many of my fellow agents were suffering from enforcing brutal and oppressive policies. And they would turn to corruption, because who really gives a shit anymore if you're doing that kind of stuff? When the Border Patrol is claiming honor first, and we all know honor first is a lie. We all know that we're sending migrants to their deaths, and these people are not criminals. We're talking about families that are looking for a safer place. Other colleagues ended up being addicted to drugs and alcohol, or they go home and they beat their spouses and they beat their children and they end up in divorces. Other colleagues end up visiting the brothels in Mexico or whatever. This, being an oppressor, has a cost. I can't tell you how many of my fellow colleagues I have lost to suicide. One of my colleagues burned himself to death in his house. Another took pills. So many have pulled the trigger on themselves. Some have used other cops to pull the trigger on them. This is why the Border Patrol's suicide rates are so high. And then we started taking their children away from them just for crossing the border. And then we started packing them in cells like sardines with one toilet. And then we started throwing rotten food at them. And then children were dying in custody, and children are still dying in custody. And the Border Patrol kept saying, we need more money, we need more money. Well, they're lying. This is the culture of the United States Border Patrol. This is what you're indoctrinated into when you join the United States Border Patrol, is that, quote unquote, these people, as former President Trump said, are a bunch of criminals, a bunch of rapists, a bunch of murderers, a bunch of drug dealers, and I'm sure some of them are good people. Well, let me tell you, 99.9% of the people apprehended by Border Patrol and DPS do not have a criminal record. They are asylum seekers. They are migrants. That is not the same thing as a drug smuggler. Drug smugglers, the cartel, sometimes force migrants and asylum seekers to carry drugs. But there is a difference between asylum seekers and migrants and criminals. And these people that we are aiming these brutal deterrence policies with this casualty wire, pushing them into the rivers, doing all this other stuff to them, taking their children, and making them cross in deserts until the point where they die. We are responsible for that. We are responsible for that. And I am telling you this as a former senior patrol agent, as a former senior intelligence agent with San Diego Sector, as a former temporary supervisory Border Patrol agent who has nothing but outstandings and excellence in her evaluations from the Border Patrol. This is who we are. And we need to wake up. We need to wake up to this and say, this is not who we want to be.
We know historically that it was photos, graphic images from Vietnam that were published in the United States that turned the tide there, that helped bring an end to that war and bring American soldiers home. But it took the media having the courage to publish horrific, sad, horrible, obscene photos and share those with the American public in order for that horror, that corrupt US policy to end. And even there, we have soldiers who came back insane, who killed themselves, who came back alcoholic, drug addicted, all of that. It horribly impacted an entire generation of American soldiers, never mind what it did to people in Vietnam. But we have Nicholas Wingate here, courageously speaking out. And
you have Jim Budd here speaking out.
And documenting.
And Marianna speaking out.
And documenting these things and pushing the truth out there. And I know you and I both talk to media all the time and get ignored now because the good guys are in charge or something. I don't know. Like right now, where the fuck is Jacob Soboroff? He sure cared a whole lot.
Written his book. I commented the other day. I was like, how many children have to die before Rachel Maddow starts crying? I mean, you know, and I love Rachel Maddow.
We reach out to media about this. They say, "Ay, nada que ver. There's nothing to see there. Just, you know, we're gonna
nada que ver."
When
the media does not care. The media on the right and the media on the right like loves to expose it. If you want to see dead bodies of migrants, go look at Breitbart. They'll show you all you want. But I will say, if you want to see what deterrence policies are really about, go visit the armadillos of the desert. That's a group that searches for lost and dead migrant bodies to send them back. Or the eagles of the desert, called I believe it's pronounced aguilas. Is that correct?
Aguilas,
Aguilas. Thank you.
And then you've got No More Deaths or No Más Muertes. That organization, which puts out water and also
Mhm.
searches for when somebody gets a call about a missing family member who was trying to make this migration track.
The battalion Samaritans do, the Green Valley Samaritans, the Tucson Samaritans, the Ajo Samaritans, Border Kindness has a group through James and Jackie, who James and Jackie cannot stand me, but but that's their right. But they also do very good work in providing food and water. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting what we're doing. And these Border Patrol agents and these DPS officers who then turn around and say, oh, look, we're saving these people. It's possible, and it does exist that DPS and Border Patrol do rescue and save a lot of lives. I've saved a lot of lives. I've also sent a lot of lives to their deaths by pushing them further out there. I supported policies that push people to their deaths. So you can have both things happening at the same time. And if you look at this officer who blew the whistle, what was his name again?
Nicholas Wingate. And, he's a champion. He
I
says
wish I was strong enough to have done it when I was an agent and not have waited until after my attempt. But yeah.
Well, and where are the people of conscience within those organizations? And if they exist and we don't know about them, they need to reach out to us. We will publish their photos. We will protect their identities. We will do what the media no longer cares to do, and that is tell the truth.
Yep, and they can send stuff. I'll give you my Proton account. They can send stuff to Jenn.Budd, JENN.BUDD at Proton, PROTON, mail, MAIL.com. Jenn.Budd at protonmail.com. You can send me stuff, and if we feel that it's valid and obviously that it's justified and we can improve it, then we'll be happy to put it out. But I have media do this to me all the time. I mean, I can't tell you how often I've been asked to tell my rape story, which I am not telling anybody anymore because I've written about it. I read the book for Audible, and I did like a 3-hour interview with this last reporter, and
Jenn,
very much in depth about the rape culture, and then they just don't use it. So you give this stuff to the media, and then they just sit on it and don't do anything with it. And you put so much of yourself out there trying to do the right thing. So I understand where this man is coming from, and I hope he stays strong. And I don't think he'll need any help or any backup, but if he does, he can get a hold of me, and I'd be glad to go over there to Texas. And
I just got a breaking news alert. That the Justice Department has sent a letter to Greg Abbott, to the state of Texas, and they are planning legal action against the floating border barrier. And I will tell you, as someone involved in litigation about another
That'll be 10 years from now.
Well, or it'll happen much faster, but it will ultimately allow this border barrier, this floating death trap, to stay.
Here's the thing. If Joe Biden and Kamala Harris really want to do something about the floating barrier and the casualty wire and the traps that DPS is leaving and stuff, I understand that the property there in Texas is private property, but they also have the right, like we've seen Border Patrol agents when this wire first went up. Like I said, the border is in the middle of the river. So once the migrants cross that middle point, their body is in the United States, and you cannot put them back. So you see Border Patrol agents, and this pissed off Fox News to no end when this first started. They said, oh, Border Patrol agents are cutting our wire and allowing the migrants to come in. Well, yeah, dumbass, because you put it within the United States. You didn't put it right on the line with Mexico in the middle of the river. So of course they are going to cut. Plus, they're required to save people who are in danger. And by them not saving people, then they could be in trouble. So if the president of the United States and the vice president of the United States and the secretary of Homeland Security want to actually make a difference, then they would order the Border Patrol and they would order the National Guard to get rid of these dangerous casualty wires and all these other things in order to save lives. And they have the right to do that as a federal agency, and they should be bold enough to freaking do that.
That is exactly right. Litigation is bullshit.
Especially in
we,
Texas.
We see the U.S. Coast Guard out on the river. The U.S. Coast Guard can go into the middle of the river and remove this illegal death trap, this floating buoy barrier, as well as these barrels covered. And they have the equipment, the depth finders and everything else, the sonar, radar to find any other traps that are there. So litigation is a lazy farce.
Yeah, they need to find a way to remove it, or we activists need to find a way to remove it. We need to do something, because we just can't let these children end up trapped in this Concertina, whatever. I like casualty wire and all this stuff. We're talking about people's lives. You do not have the right as a law enforcement officer, or as a private citizen, or as governor of Texas, or as president of the United States, to sit there and say these people are committing a crime, and therefore we're going to put obstacles in their way that then will kill them or maim them seriously. You're responsible for that. You're responsible for their injuries and their deaths. You are not the judge and jury and the executioner.
The government, the federal government, does not have to find a way or create a way or sue the state of Texas. They already have the authority and the manpower and the law. They have the resources to go remove it. They should be doing it right now, but they're not going to, because they tacitly endorse all of this. And heading into another election cycle, Biden and all the Democratic candidates don't want to appear weak on immigration, which the right will frame as for open borders or anti-American.
I mean, what I would like to demand is that politicians go down to the border and actually do what they did in the Trump administration. I would love to go with them. Give me a call. I'll go with you. They need to demand that the Border Patrol remove these wires that are injuring people. They need to demand that the people that have been injured from all of this stuff be allowed to stay in the United States under a visa, because they have obviously been victims of a crime. The United States Department of Justice needs to investigate the state of Texas. They need to look into if these former Border Patrol agents who have now joined Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, how much information, how much national security information have they been giving to this man and these other people? Do they have the authority to be talking about such things? We need to start holding people accountable. But the investigation is going to find that there was nothing written, and therefore you can't hold anybody in DPS or the state of Texas accountable, and it was just a misunderstanding. Like I said, before they came out with that excuse, that's exactly what they are going to do. Almost like I know what I'm talking about. And so we have to start changing plans. We cannot sit around and wait for these investigations. The investigations are shams. That is where we are in our country. And if you're not willing to get up and go out and demand better and protest and say, this is unacceptable, we are not going to tolerate this, then I'm just going to say it. You're the same person who would sit in your house during the 1930s and 40s and go, what concentration camp? They're rounding up Jews? Huh? I didn't see it. That's where we are right now, America. That's where we are right now. We've got law enforcement officials in the state of Texas. We have Border Patrol agents in the southern states thinking that deterrence policies that send people intentionally harm and send people to their deaths are what makes America great. And I'm sorry, that's not what makes America great. It destroys the agents and the officers that are doing it. It destroys their families. It's going to destroy your economies. It's going to destroy us as a nation by allowing this to continue and not facing the facts of what we have created in this immigration system. These are policies of genocide.
Jen, would like to invite people in Eagle Pass to reach out to us. as you and I both know, it's best to be invited
Yes.
to a local community
Yeah.
to advocate for them. They need to, to express that they want an outsider to come in and see and document and amplify and share. I want to invite people in Eagle Pass to reach out to us and invite us. The time has come for mass protests and public resistance and to monkey wrench this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not happening.
No.
Eagle Pass is remote and it is fully militarized right now. The government, the state government and the state National Guard have a chokehold on it.
Yeah.
And if there's not mass public resistance, and I would love to see mutiny. I would love to see all of Nicholas Wingate's colleagues in Texas DPS and Texas National Guard have the cojones. Look, guys, reach down between your legs. Do you have a nutsack there or not? Are you a man? Are you a woman who has courage?
Ovaries?
Whatever it is. Yeah, your ovaries. Find
Are you
them.
a chingona?
Sí, eres chingona, eres chingón. Do you have a conscience? Do you really believe that one day you're going to have to stand before your God and account for your actions? If that is true, good Christian men and women, you need to stand. You need to make this your stand. This is nothing different than the civil rights movements of the 1950s and on. This is nothing different than the actions that were taken in the Civil War. And it is our time. This is our generation's fight.
You cannot belong to an organization and say that your job is to serve and protect. And we know that's not to serve and protect the public. But you cannot sit there and lay traps for human beings. I don't care if they're documented or if they're undocumented. A piece of paper doesn't make you a human being, doesn't make you not a human being. You cannot sit there and wear that gun and badge and claim honor first and all this other stuff when you are knowingly and intentionally setting traps and setting stuff out there for families of asylum seekers and migrants to get injured and maimed or even die. I mean, one of the things that they don't even talk about with the Haitian incident in Del Rio in 2021, I think it was, is how many Haitian children and adults were swept away by the river because they had a dam and they could only cross when not that much water was flowing. And they would open the dam off and on. And a lot of times they would open it right when a lot of people were crossing and it would sweep people down the river. And they're like, well,
Yeah, they used those gates. They used the gates that they could control as more tools of death. It's horrible. And I have stood at the canal in Mission, Texas, and watched a young man sob for his father who was making this journey with him and drown as the first in that group trying to cross the canal. He got into it not knowing that the canal is not concrete lined, it is earthen, and once you get into it, it grabs hold of you. It is quicksand, and there is no escaping. There is no escaping.
Yeah.
If I shouldn't say every, because I know there are people in the United States who have hearts that are rotted black, full of hate and fear and racism. They are diseased. But there are, I would like to believe, a lot more good people. And if they see these things, maybe not firsthand as I have, maybe in photos, maybe in video, we can turn this tide. We, instead of the profit mongers instead of the corporate oligarchs who pay our politicians to enact these policies. Maybe we can impact public policy with our voices, with our sheer numbers and our will, so that we have a government of the people and by the people, not of citizens united, which is nothing more than corporations and the oligarchs that own them.
And this is on both sides. This
It is on both sides.
the Democrats and the Republicans. And these deterrence policies that are genocidal policies that intentionally injure migrants. And here's the truth. It's just like on our last podcast, we were talking about Raul Gonzalez, Border Patrol agent Raul Gonzalez. That gate they put up to injure people on your property, on the Butterfly Center property, that's a deterrence policy. And who did it kill? It killed a Border Patrol agent. And now the Border Patrol is acting like, well, we're not responsible.
Oh, they swept that under the
responsible.
rug.
You're the one that put the fucking gate up there.
They swept it under the rug. They literally removed the gate. They made it disappear. Otra vez, nada que ver. There's nothing here, nothing to see. It's disappeared. There's no investigation. But, you know, with Texas, I guess we shouldn't worry because the state has announced they're going to investigate the state. And now we have the same Department of Justice that worked with the IBWC and Fisher, who built an illegal structure in violation of the binational treaty. They're going to sue them over it. So we shouldn't worry.
Well, even more than that, I mean, we're talking about the same Department of Justice who knew for 30 years that the Border Patrol maintained secret and illegal cover-up teams. This is the same DOJ that knows about deterrence policies that intentionally maim and kill migrants and asylum-seeking families. This is the same Department of Justice who refuses to look at the Border Patrol rape culture. This is the same Department of Justice who has refused to look at the pursuit practices of Border Patrol agents, where we intentionally make them wreck and kill people and hide it from the public that we did it. You know, I mean, it goes on and on. And like we said, the press, even the liberal, supposed liberal press or middle press, they don't care anymore now that Biden's in office. But if a Republican gets back in office, then they'll be all over it. But it's just, and that's why we created Border Patrol Watch, is because there's like nobody is talking about this stuff. And you and I are tired of trying, you know, people from the press call us all the time, and then we spend hours on the phone talking to them, and then they come out here and they shoot hours of video, and then nothing ever happens from it. Nothing. I mean, there's a lot that the Biden administration can do, but right now, I want them in front of the TV saying, this isn't, you know, they'll sit there and say, this isn't who we are, but it is who we are. So I expect them to say, this is who we have been, and we need to change things. I want them to take the lead on this. I want the Democrats to stop being so afraid to talk about immigration.
We need more men and women of conscience and of courage, like Nicholas Wingate, coming forward.